Hello and welcome to a post-release discussion of the Intel Specialization Revamp. I have other videos in the works, but while I was writing the script for one of them, I feel like I really need to cover this in a separate video and really, again, make a plea for some kind of developer attention to fix these issues. I know some of you that have been at the game for a long time are probably laughing right now, and historically very little is done in response to these kind of balance issues, but I'm going to try to at least put the information out there in a constructive way in the hopes that it gets fixed. Let me start with the low-hanging fruit first. Intelligence Team, Exodus Active Probat, and Stealth Increasing Abilities. Prior to the revamp going live, they announced in a blog that Intel Team would have its stealth value all raised across the board, so that Intel Team 1 and 2 would have the same stealth value as 3. That idea alone doesn't bother me. Intel Team 1 was laughable before because it had such low stealth that you may as well not even use it. I've done a lot of calculating, testing, and work on the Intel Team thing, and I've narrowed down the problem being that Attack Pattern Lambda, a pilot ability, decreases your enemy's perception by a large amount. For those that don't know, let me run through a build really quick. Say I have a Deimos pilot destroyer, or any ship that has both Intel and pilot seating, of which there are quite a few. I slot Intel Team 1, which grants 4,680 stealth now. I'll also slot emergency powered aux 3 for another 100 stealth. Let's say that means I also have 100 aux power. That's another 100 more for each point of aux power. There's also a passive 100 stealth skill from the skill tree, and if I use a bridge officer like a pirate, even though the tooltip on pirate says he should grant perception, I actually get 150 stealth. Lastly, I'll add the trait Exodus Active Probat, which is not a flat 500 stealth. It's actually a percentage of your base stealth value, in my case around 530. We're now at 5,660 stealth. That's a lot of stealth, but the right build with high perception could potentially counter it, right? Let's take a look at a sample build to counter this ship. We have 5,000 base perception to start. Adding in the Jem'Hadar deflector and our own copy of Emergency Powered Auxiliary 3, if we're at 100 aux power and in any ship that isn't a science vessel, we get 40% of our aux power as perception. So we're at 5,447. Not even close to enough. Okay, so what if we use the console Tachyon Detection Field from the Tier 3 Nebula? Sure, it's only active for 30 seconds every minute, so 50% uptime, but that's another 236 perception for 5,683. We now finally have more perception than they have stealth, but by such a tiny amount that we can only attack that ship if we're within 0.3 kilometers, so that's basically nothing. So what next? Well, if you don't have a ship with a pilot seat or an intel seat, nothing, you're screwed. There's no counter, so good luck. It doesn't matter how many sensor probe consoles we slot, there is no way to get enough perception to target that ship. Now, if you have Intel or Pilot as an option, let's say we use Attack Pattern Lambda 2, the pilot ability, that grants us 350 perception, but only if our weapons actually fire. We don't get it just from activating the ability itself. Kind of a cart before the horse situation there, since we need perception in order to fire our weapons, but let's ignore that issue for now and just add it up. That's 6,033 perception, but only with 50% uptime, and that means we can target that ship at 7 kilometers. I think that's reasonable, but keep in mind that's only half the time, and we had to give up a deflector, a console, and 2 bridge officer abilities to do it. I would call that not well balanced, but not broken either. Now, add in that the stealth ship is using Attack Pattern Lambda 3, which subtracts 450 perception from anything it hits. If we had 6,033 perception, we'd now only have 5,583, but of course the enemy ship still has its 5,660 stealth, so we can't target that ship at any range. What else could we do? Well, if we use the Intel specialization, we could squeeze out a tiny bit more perception, still not enough to target at any meaningful distance. We could also use Intel Team, which now grants perception 2, so the direct counter to Intel Team is another Intel Team. Balance. I tweeted at Bordicus before the Intel Revamp changes went live, begging them to look into the lambda thing and remove the debuff from it entirely. I did get a response, which I genuinely appreciate, I really do, but he says that a stealth build, quote, is paying a significant cost of opportunity to be able to use those abilities in tandem. Clearly there's some misunderstanding here, but I get it, he doesn't know that much about PvP. Our definitions of cost of opportunity, though, are clearly way off. The stealth build I mentioned above is using one starship trait slot, one that also grants 15% bonus damage and 40 control still in addition to the stealth value, a personal trait of fresh from R&R that most PvP builds are already running anyway, and the buff abilities Emergency to Aux and Attack Pattern Lambda, Lambda of course being the preferred attack pattern in PvP anyway because of the accuracy boost already. Really, they're giving up a trivial amount of damage and a single buff ability for the privilege of being untargetable 90% of the time. Okay, then he says, I agree there would ideally be a way to offset the benefits they get, but expect it to have a similar cost. Okay. That makes perfect sense if I read it literally, and I agree too. But as it stands right now, it's not possible in practice to counter a build with that much stealth. The thing that makes it so frustrating to me is that none of this matters for PvE content. If they're concerned that lowering stealth values is going to upset the solo elite DPS run crowd, it won't because they aren't using Lambda anyway, only PvPers are. So I guess what I would like to know is, how was any of this tested or balanced? They did lower the Lambda debuff value slightly, but raised the stealth of Intel teams, so effectively nothing changed at all. So in what environment did they think that a ship that has almost 5,700 stealth, over 6,000 effective stealth with the Lambda perception debuff, and almost no drawbacks? I mean, what argument could someone even make that this is actually balanced? Okay, I don't want to spend too much time harping on that. We've all known the Exodus plus Lambda thing has been broken for ages. I guess I just thought that since they were finally revisiting Intel abilities, we might get a fix for something that's been broken for years. Especially a fix like this where it would be easy. No major code or behavior change is necessary. Just go in, find the value for Lambda's perception debuff, and change it to a lower number. That's it. Speaking of minor code changes, attack pattern Lambda 2 and Lambda 3 currently add accuracy to your enemy. It doesn't reduce it anymore. I guess someone put a plus sign where there should have been a minus. Lambda 1 is correct though and does subtract accuracy, so they only broke 2 out of the 3. And seriously, why does Lambda not just apply the accuracy and perception buff as soon as you use it like any other attack pattern? Why should a weapon have to fire in order to get those buffs? I don't understand. Okay, next one that I have to bring up, because I was working on my free-to-play science PvP build and I was using this, evade target lock. So evade target lock used to disable your target for 1, 2, or 3 seconds depending on rank, as well as some other stuff that doesn't matter right now. So they increase the disable base length to 2, 3, or 4 seconds, but the length of the disable can be increased based on control skill now. Take a look at my tooltip here. I can disable a target for 7.5 seconds. I have a pretty low control skill of around 170. This disable completely locks out an enemy player's tray. They can't activate anything, and this disable is not cleared by science team, engineering team, tactical team, or even intel team. On top of that, this disable is supposed to scale with the target's control resistances, but it doesn't. In my testing, if I disable a target for 7.5 seconds, the same as my tooltip, they're completely disabled for the full 7.5 seconds regardless of their control rating. On my main account science build, evade target lock 3 on that ship can disable an enemy target for almost 15 seconds. So for this one, I guess first of all, it needs to be correctly resisted by the receiving end's control skill. Even beyond that, I wonder if the disable time is too long, but I really won't know until the first part is fixed. Maybe this is something like temporal skills, where something like half duration versus players needs to be added because it's very broken right now. Second thing is that it has to be cleared by something. None of the immunity to controls work on it, like evasive tactics or fresh from R&R, and it's not even cleared by any active abilities like engineering team, which should clear any disable. I understand that with any major patch, things are bound to be broken or changed, and things will get adjusted over time, and as players we have to adapt to that. Player feedback is critical to this process since we're the ones actually playing the game, so this video is me providing that feedback. Not that I think anyone from Cryptic actually watches my videos, of course, but these two issues are glaring and really should be easy solution in the grand scheme of things. If evade target lock is too difficult to fix with control resist or whatever, just revert it back to the way it was. It's not like PvE builds are using that ability, so it doesn't affect anyone else anyway. And just remove the perception debuff from Lambda entirely. Intel and Exodus ships would still be useful and annoying, but as it stands right now, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really hope these things get fixed.